Simon.
All right, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Nathan, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember McPherson.
Here.
Councilmember Biggs.
Here.
Councilmember Laraway.
Here.
Council President Bruce.
Here.
Mayor Steer.
Here. And if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I wonder if it would be wise to, I don't know how many people we have here for the public hearing for item 7A, but we might want to just move that ahead in the agenda. I think that'd be good, and then we won't make people sit around waiting to find out what's up with that. So if we could have a motion for that, and then the consent agenda is next.
I make a motion that we move agenda item 7A to 4 and then number down accordingly for the rest.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry. Nathan, would you poll the council, please?
Councilmember McPherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs.
Aye.
Councilmember Laraway.
Aye.
Council President Bruce.
Aye.
And that motion carries. And did you do the consent agenda there?
We didn't do it.
Okay.
I moved it down.
Anybody have any questions on the consent agenda?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as published.
Aye. Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All right, Nathan, would you poll the council?
Councilmember McPherson.
Yes.
Councilmember Biggs.
Aye.
Councilmember Laraway.
Yes.
Council President Bruce.
Yes.
And that motion carries. So we're going to jump right up to item 7A. This is the ordinance amendment for the changes for the city council ordinance. Doug, would you report on that, please?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Doug Hansen, CUNA Planning and Zoning, 751 West 4th Street, CUNA, Idaho, 83634. The CUNA Melba News is listed in CUNA City Code 1111 as the official newspaper of the city of CUNA. The CUNA Melba News now has changed to the Meridian CUNA Press, a subsidiary of the Idaho Press. The publication for this evening ran in the Idaho Press on both February 7th and February 14th, 2024. By doing so, staff believes that the public hearing for this evening was properly noticed. However, due to the ambiguity in both state statute and city code, staff believes that it would be prudent to not hear the ordinance amendment this evening in order to ensure adequate notice and remove any ambiguity or concern. So therefore, staff will bring the ordinance amendment forward for a public hearing to be held on April 2nd, 2024. Notice will be provided both in the Idaho Press on March 14th, 2024, and the Meridian CUNA Press on March 15th, 2024. And I'll stand by for any questions.
Okay, any questions for
No, sir.
Doug? Do we need a motion to make that happen? I don't think we do.
For the record, Doug Hansen, CUNA Planning and Zoning, we won't need a motion because it's going to be renoticed.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, backtracking now. External reports, city audited financials and communication letter, Bailey and Company.
Thank you. My name's Cassie Zatero. I'm with Bailey and Company, and we perform the financial audit for CUNA Urban Renewal Agency and the City of CUNA. So the letter there that you have in front of you on the screen is your communication letter. It just kind of highlights some of the areas throughout the audit. Nothing, there's a lot of boilerplate language in there. There's nothing of significance that I need to point out there. So we can go directly to the audit report and the financial statements. So the audit report is on page 3. So your audit has multiple opinion units to it, and there are actually 2 sets of financial statements within your financial statements. There's government-wide financial statements and fund financial statements, and within those there are opinion units. And the 2 opinion units in your government-wide financial statements are the governmental activities and the business-type activities. Those both received a qualified opinion, as well as the water, sewer, and irrigation funds within the fund financial statements. And that's just because of the same issue that we've had for several years. You need to have an actuarial valuation done to determine if you have another post-employment benefit liability. And because that number tends to be a material number that we've seen in other entities, we can't get away with just saying it's not material and we're going to ignore it. So until we know what that number is, that would create a qualified opinion in those opinion units in your financial statements. The remaining opinion units have unmodified opinions, which means they're clean opinions. And then if you want to flip over to a couple more pages into that report, there's one more opinion that we need to address in this report. And it's on page 5 in the supplementary information section. Yep, keep going down just a little bit more. Yep, right there. Okay, so we're required to have a single audit in these financial statements. And so there's an opinion later on that'll address there, but in this part, there has to be an opinion expressed on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, and that's where it lists the money that you spent of federal funding. And this is also where your opinion is expressed on some combining financial statements that are in the back of the financial statements. So those are your non-major funds, and those all have an unmodified opinion. So that's good on that. And then if we want to keep going in the financial statements, I'm going to have you go clear to page 13. So I'm just going to hit some highlights here. So on page 13, this is going to be your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for your governmental funds. So that's the general fund, grant fund, Lake Neighborhoods Fee Fund, park impact fee, and non-major funds. And down towards the bottom of that page in that far right column, the total governmental funds, you'll see that for those funds, this doesn't include your enterprise funds, which is your water, sewer, trash, irrigation. That had a decrease in fund balance of $16,374. And then we also have a prior period adjustment that I'm going to address later when I get into the notes to the financial statements. And then we're going to go to page 18. So this is the results of your enterprise funds for basically your profit and loss for your enterprise funds. And if you go most of the way down in the far right column, there's a change in that position. So that increased that $21,184,973. And I'm going to contrast that to the cash flow statement. So if you go to page 20, for just your enterprise funds, you're going to see on page 20 that your cash increased $4,576,932. That's that last line that you can see there on the right. And that difference between that 21 million and the 21 million and this has to do with accruals. And also, there was a bunch of donated infrastructure based off of how that works with the developers. And also, when you have transfers from other funds, from the governmental funds into the enterprise funds, and it's movement of capital assets, those are treated as contributions in the enterprise funds. And so that made up, between the difference between the 21 million and the 4 million here, 9 million of it is that. So, go down farther, a little bit farther. The 9 million is actually cash spent on capital assets. 11.8 million, that's considered your donated infrastructure. 7 million of that came from developers, and the remaining came from the other funds within the city. And then I'm gonna have you go to page 29. Okay, on that page, on that note, right there where you're at. So, this year you were able to obtain a letter of credit with the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines to have your cash at ICCU collateralized. And so I just wanted to point that out, that has been taken care of. And then we're gonna go to page 38. So that prior period adjustment that I talked about, that's note 12, correction of an error. So in the prior 2 years, you received grant funds from the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Grant. And that one has some particular nuances to it that aren't normal with grants, and so that was discovered after last year's financial statements were done. So we needed to take those grant funds out of a prior year and put them in the current year. And so that was that 4.39 million there. And then there was one other correction where the police impact fee fund intended on reimbursing the general fund, and so there were some expenses that occurred in the prior year that now need to show as an amount due to the general fund, and that was that 243,000 showing there. So that explains what happened to the fund balance and in those funds because of those changes. And then that last note, you have a change in some estimates. So there was some building permits that were, and some mechanical permit revenue that it was determined that would have to be returned. And then it was so that ended up understating the actual return of, let me read the note. It was determined those estimates understated the actual return of that revenue by 174,000. So an adjustment, when it's a change in estimate, is accounted for in the current year. It's not a prior period adjustment. It's not considered an error. And then on the next page, you have note 14, a contingent liability. So there's a pickleball court that was constructed, and the city wants to determine that the surface of the court will hold up under extreme weather conditions. So there is an amount that's being withheld from the contractor until that can be determined, but it's more than likely that the city will end up paying that. So it's reported as a contingent liability in your financial statements until that can be determined. And then I'm going to have you flip to page 48. They just get longer and longer every year. Okay, and if I believe that Jared is going to have an actuarial valuation done, your city treasurer, for that other post-employment benefit liability, and your financial statements are going to get even longer with that. All right, so this was the part of the single audit. So this is your schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So you spent 4.9 million in federal funds. The majority of that was that coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, and it went towards mainly infrastructure in your sewer fund. And then we're going to go to the reports. Actually, I'm going to go to the very last page is where I'm going to go next. Page 56. So page 56 is a summary, first of the opinions that I discussed already in the first report that we talked about. Keep going down. 56, page 56. So there's two other reports back here, and the page that I'm gonna have them stop on is a summary of those reports. Okay, so this is called a schedule of findings and question costs, and it has you summarize those reports, the opinions in those reports, and whether there were any findings. And as you can see, there were none. That first report is a report about the audit. The second section, internal control of financial reporting, and that has to do with telling you that your audit was conducted under government auditing standards. That report expresses no opinion. And then the internal control over major programs, that has to do with the single audit, and there were no findings in that as well. And then we also issued an unmodified or clean opinion on the single audit for that major program. And if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that the major program was that coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds. And the question that asks if you're a low-risk auditee, and it says no, that just is because in order to qualify as a low-risk auditee, you can't have any qualified opinions in your financial statements, and you have to have 2 years of single audits in a row before you can qualify as a low-risk auditee. And all that means is that as the auditor, when I test your federal funds, I have to test 40% of the dollars instead of 20% for a low-risk auditee. And that is it on those financial statements. And really within those financial statements, your urban renewal agency was actually in those financial statements in a couple of those columns, but that's where we're going to go next, and I'm going to have you skip that letter. So the independent auditor's report is on page 3. So the opinion is on the page above that one? Okay, so it's a clean opinion on the financial statements as it was represented in the city's financial statements. What you're gonna see here is there's just a little more information on the fund financial statement side of it, where the city's financial statements just mainly shows you the government-wide side of it. So if we go into page 7 of the financial statements, you'll see the balance sheet for the funds that are in your urban renewal agency, and there was a fund added this year for your East District. So those are represented there, so you can see what each of those funds has, and there's no liabilities. There's some deferred revenue for property taxes. Those are property taxes mainly for, so you'd levy taxes in '23, and you're going to collect those in fiscal year '24, but accounting standards require that you book that levy as a deferred inflow. So that's what that unavailable property tax revenue is, because you're not going to get it until your next fiscal year. That's why it's considered unavailable. And then if you go into page 9, that's the revenue and expenses for those two funds. And you had an increase of the $312,000. The grants and contributions amount, that was money that was actually came from the city to pay for the East District formation cost, and that has a corresponding capital outlay. So that's why there's no change in fund balance on that one, a zero change in fund balance. And then that last report that's at the back of the financial statement, same thing, conducted under government auditing standards, no opinion expressed. We test internal controls and compliance, and if there were findings, they would show up in that report, and there were none. So unless there's questions, that's all I have.
All right, very good. Questions?
Sure.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much. I know
Thank
you
you.
were here several days and worked hard on that, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And also thank Jared and his team for supporting with that audit. That creates a lot of work, and we do a good job. We appreciate it. All right, and we did the public hearing already. That is actually all we have on the agenda tonight. Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss that? Public comments, is there anybody who wishes to address the council? Yeah. You would just state your name and address for the record?
Hi, I'm Cindy Geeson. My address is 1363 South Ash Avenue, Cuna, Idaho. I actually signed up on that to talk on the Title 5-6, but when I found out it's canceled, it gave me an opportunity to say this. I want to thank you and Cuna City for recognizing the Human Traffic Awareness Month. I appreciate the resolution and all that stuff. And I've enjoyed seeing your motivations to make Cuna kinder. You know, the bingo, I think I've marked off a few of those. Hey, does this count for one? And, yeah, and just I thank you all. And thank you for putting up with me. I know I'm a little pushy, but, you know, I have a passion for the city and for the people. And one last thing was, I noticed the prayer hasn't been, you know, done for a really long time. And I'd wished you guys would reconsider, you know, bringing that back into our city and into this building. You
And
know,
we are discussing.
you're working on that? Yeah. If you need me to round up some prayer warriors or experts, I'll be happy to help, so.
Awesome.
I'll also be happy to help you with any website troubleshooting updates because I know them all. Okay, so thank you. I just appreciate you guys. You work hard.
Well, thank you for that, and the Cuna kindness thing, that is actually a really lot of fun. I really enjoy getting to do that. We get a really good benefit from that, so thanks for noticing that. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much, and did council have anything you wanted to mention? No. Okay, all right, well, with that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.